in the local food movement, everybody is demanding organic and demanding transparency in their food, and I think we believe textiles and what you're wearing is the next step in that transparent. I mean, you're wearing clothes every single day. Why not know who made it?
From Canopy Media, this is Mind Your Wake, a podcast sharing ideas in good business from around the world. I'm your host, Elshadai Smith-Mensah, and the voice you just heard was Maggie Cline, one of the sisters behind Anchal Project, a nonprofit design brand creating handmade textiles produced by artisans in India. As a nonprofit, they address employment inequality to reduce the number of women reliant on commercial sex work in India. That story is central to every item that they sell.
The more you can teach consumers to know who made their product, the stronger we'll be as a global community, especially in fast fashion and quick turnovers. I mean, the stuff moves so fast. It's insane how quick. And the expectations of sales and turnover is daunting. And for us, again, it's sticking our head down and saying, okay, one step at a time, one partnership, one sale at a time. We celebrate every time something sells, so we're still pretty humble.
Anchal Project operates out of an unassuming, repurposed school building in the West End of Louisville, Kentucky. But they've collaborated with major fashion brands like Anthropologie, Madewell, and Vera Bradley. And they're still dedicated to thoughtful designs and processes. I mean, they still produce dyes out of their own garden.
The odor that you smell is marigolds that we're currently, we were cooking.
This is Colleen Cline. She's the founder.
Marigolds are very common, so we grow a bunch of those, and they're easy to maintain, and then we collect them and dry them over here. And then all you do is kind of like cook them for 30 minutes, and then it brings a dye color out. So the ones that we're growing are orange, and it does dye pretty directly like an orange marigold. Michelle Obama's dress like a few years ago was like the marigold dress. That is what it is.
Colleen says she started off on a pretty typical path in design school, but that changed when she took a trip to India and saw firsthand the cycle of sex trade that many women become trapped in without other opportunities for employment. So the idea of Anchal was born.
In the very beginning, we connected with NGOs that were already working with the community of sex workers. So again, they were providing health screenings and giving free condoms and doing that kind of work. So they already had built trust with the community, which I think is super critical. It wasn't like me as a white blonde woman walking through the streets of India being like, come join me, like I think like, thank God, like so weird. It's like, so it's very much driven by the local community. I'm not the face of the organization in India. It's the women and the artisans.
One of those artisans is Nazia, who Colleen has known since the very beginning.
And I met her on my second trip to India, but she was one of our first artisans. When I first met her, she immediately held my hand. We started walking down the street together, and she was just like very enthusiastic and joyful. But under the age of 18, her husband abandoned her. So she didn't have an education. She was in an arranged marriage at a very young age and really no tools to earn a living herself. Without any options and support, she went to work in the sex trade. And several years in, met us and was just innately very creative. We gave her some tools and just a little guidance. And I've never seen someone create such beautiful work. She's like my design inspiration, actually, because she's so talented. So I got to witness just her beautiful growth. I mean, when we first met, besides holding the hand and being like really joyful, she would cry in interviews when we would talk to her about her life and really violence that she had experienced, but she was so hopeful. And I got to witness like her decreasing her clients over the years and then finally leaving. And now she moved away, but started at her own shop and her own like little design studio of sense, and supports her son, her mother, and her sister. And that's what Anchal is all about. It's just like the little love and support can really change so many lives.
Women like Nazia come to Anchal in a number of different ways.
But we do recruiting in a lot of different ways. A lot of it now throughout the years, because women in the community see success from their neighbors, is it's peer-to-peer recruitment. So we have a good reputation of being a stable partner. So that's huge. Other ways that we reach new groups is to do free health screenings in the community. So we did like a pop-up health exam as a method for recruiting sex workers. We have also worked with madams before who have recruited for us. And so our major impact has to do with providing alternative careers in textile and design to women who have been forced into the commercial sex trade. So we are part of our program is really to give the jobs and skills training, and then we give them full-time employment if they so choose, as well as educational workshops and some health benefits as well. But really the community of support that is built over the years with each of the artisans is kind of the biggest benefit that we've seen, and just the love and support that they get from each other, and knowing that they have restored dignity has been the biggest impact that we've seen.
The Sisterhood of Anchal Project is over 150 women in India, and 2 right here in Louisville, Kentucky, where their headquarters is located. All the textiles they create are either vintage saris or organic cotton.
And then the ones that are made in Louisville are all hand-dyed from natural materials. So I'll kind of go back into each of those pieces. The textiles that are made in India that are all hand-quilted, originally we started with a more traditional piece called the kantha quilt. So it's layers of vintage saris. They're all very colorful and bright. It's the traditional Indian dress that is worn. It's 6 to 9 feet long and 3 feet wide. So the edge of the sari, which is the most decorative part of it, is called the anchal, and that's where our name comes from. So it's the most decorative, but it means shelter and protection. So this is the metaphor for how we run our organization. But the quilts are made of 2 panels of vintage saris, so all of them are one of a kind. And then it also translates into different fashion accessories like scarves and bags. And then a couple of years ago, we moved into using new material, and we wanted to keep the same sustainability as using recycled material, but had the interest to expand our product offering, mainly for wholesale accounts. So we introduced organic cotton. So each of those pieces, again, lots of quilts, a ton of pillows. Those are some of our most popular pieces. All have different patchwork and different colors that we bring together with the organic cotton, and all have intricate stitching. But the best part about each piece is that the artisan that made it signs her name. And one of our artisans, last time I was in India, Neetu shared, she was like, I'll never get to travel the world, but I know my name will. So it means a whole lot to them to be able to put their name on each piece, and they know that it's traveling and being loved and appreciated by people around the world.
This podcast is brought to you in part by BKD, CPAs and advisors whose expertise go well beyond the standard accounting services to help address your challenges with an array of solutions, including risk management, digital transformation, wealth management, business transition services, fraud investigations, and valuation services. Learn more at bkd.com.
Colleen and her sister try to travel to India once a year when they provide training workshops for the artisans.
What we've been focusing on the last few years is how can their stories translate into the art work that they're creating. So we've given photographs to the artisans for them to translate into fabric. So they become these like narrative textile art pieces. And then we've even given them the camera to where they can take photographs of their neighborhood, their homes, and then they come back, we print the photos, and then they create these beautiful pieces with them. And last spring we launched a quilt that was designed by an artisan, so it's come full circle. Especially for me, it's kind of the most exciting part to see them innately create these really beautiful pieces without direction or influence, and the raw talent that evolves and emerges is really beautiful to witness.
Now, Colleen didn't do it alone. Early on, she teamed up with her sister Maggie Clines.
Getting involved in Anchal was kind of a dream come true because I was studying architecture. My sister was at RISD with getting her master's. Both, again, that traditional path was what we thought we were going to take. And then she takes this trip to India, and I was wildly jealous. And then she all of a sudden is starting a company, and I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, well, come up, visit me, and we'll do a fundraiser. So I was there for Anchal's first fundraiser, and then after I graduated, I kind of jumped on board and started volunteering and interning for my sister. And then that quick, we kind of decided to give it a go. So it was a marrying of my passion for design and also love for social impact and change, because I think we both had been sparked pretty young to give back and to be a part of your community. And then knowing we could be a part of a global community was even more exciting for a young 22-year-old.
Maggie says they didn't know what they were in for in the beginning.
Oh my goodness, the amount of times I've Googled business terms. I mean, we were wildly unprepared and extremely naive, but I think that's the only reason we did this, because I think if we knew what was in store for us, we probably would never have done it. So I think, embracing young entrepreneurs and young creatives is super important, and not to stamp out their hopes and dreams, because we wouldn't have made it. I think a lot of times people said no to us, and we just kept going, put our heads down. We're pretty determined people. So it was full of mistakes and full of questions and insecurities and a lot of comparison. I mean, it was still in the beginning stages of, I remember Pinterest launched when we were in our first year. So there was a lot, it was still, pretty new. And I think staying true, keeping our head down and focused is what's kept us going. And being in sustainable growth is really important to us, because I think at this point, it's so easy to get wrapped into comparison, and when you're on Instagram or Facebook, it's hard, but everybody's on a different path. And I think we've really found our own, which is nice. It's been a long journey, so sustainable slow growth has, I think, the only reason we've been able to have these partnerships, because we keep our artisans in mind and we grow with their speed. When they're prepared and when they're able to create more complicated pieces, we can go to companies like Anthropologie and Madewell and say, okay, we're ready. We can produce that amount of product and that complicated of pieces. We designed a collection with the Guggenheim Museum this past October, which was really special. But it was good. It was a challenge for us. It was a challenge for our artisans. And then it takes our company to a different place. The amount of people who are finding us through these beautiful partnerships that we're so grateful for. And I think we're extremely lucky to work with the brands and companies that we have, because they truly are authentically involved, because they care. Madewell, Anthropologie, Vera, and Guggenheim, they're all the kindest people. So we're super lucky.
Luck and hard work might have gotten them the big brand collaborations, but their motivation comes from the artisans.
They are our inspiration. They are the reason we wake up every morning and come to work. And I think, again, with that world that we're living in where everything's super competitive, it's hard to keep going and telling yourself, no, you are doing a good job. But when you do have an amazing cause and your heart is in the right place, it really does empower you to make that next step.
Their next steps do include expansion, but Maggie says the priority is to continue to serve the communities where they're already rooted.
So expansion in our current locations is the most important part to us, and then potentially branching into different countries, different cities. Women's empowerment and the need for sustainable, beautiful work is all over the world. So I think there's a chance for us to expand kind of endlessly.
There are countless opportunities for collaboration, but as Maggie says, They know that their principles are often the deciding factor when it comes to choosing partners.
When it comes to the fact that I'm going to stand by my price point, because the price point is reflective of my wages and I know exactly where my money is going, some of those partnerships will walk away, and that's okay because we'll wait for the right one. I think for us, a lot of times it's price point. It's making sure we're not only fair trade members of the Federation, but also the organic cotton that we use is really important to producers and partners. But again, we're not going to compromise our artisans. So I think that's what we always remind ourselves when starting these conversations.
This dialogue and the stance that Anchal Project takes is far different than the existing culture of fast fashion, which has many consequences.
You know, we're in a world of consumerism. There are average of 6 seasons within a fashion company. So that's quick turnover, quick sales expectations. But then with that kind of speed, prices are low. And when prices are low, where are the wages? You know, where are the people, individuals making these products? You know, is it a safe space? Is it healthy? Is it ethical? And so asking those questions, there's some amazing outlets to research. Fashion Revolution is a really great organization. There's also a couple documentaries. The one is called The True Cost. I highly recommend it. Talks about, you know, questioning where things are coming from.
And Anchal Project puts the answer to that question right on each of their products.
Having every artisan sign their name in Hindi on each piece gives you a direct connection to your maker, you know, and then sharing their stories, connecting you to them is, I think, another way of breaking down global barriers and becoming a larger global society. You know, we believe in a global sisterhood because we all need to rise up and stand up together.
Of course, to support Anchal, you can buy their products and
you can also volunteer. You can come and help out. You guys are witnessing a current delivery of an India shipment, so processing a lot of product. We have a great team of volunteers, community. Then there's, you know, word of mouth, just sharing the story, whether it's on Instagram, Facebook, telling your friend that you learned something cool today. All of it helps.
And their Instagram feed is beautiful. The lighting, the staging, it's so good. But the last story Maggie shares really reminds us why all this gorgeous marketing, products, and their nonprofit exists in the first place. It's the story of an artisan who has been with them from the very beginning.
Shakuntala, she's one who's been with us since the very beginning. She was one of the original 15 artisans. And the great part about Anchal is that it encourages women to be promoted within the program. So they start as artisans, senior artisans, project assistants. And she runs the color matching department. So she sources all the vintage sari pieces. She matches them all together. But she also was in a super abusive relationship with her husband. And her entire focus is giving education to her 2 children. She has a daughter and a son, and they are the cutest kids. They come to the workshop and hang out with us. And there are times where she comes to the workshop bruised and, you know, but she comes in with a smile on her face. And so they come in early. And when they're not at the workshop working for Anchal, they're at home cleaning, cooking, taking care of their kids. Most of her husband is had a work accident, so he can't work anymore. So the entire burden of the household is on her. And recently, this is a pretty rough story, so I don't know. But she was finally saved enough money to buy books for her kids to go for their school. And then she came home and found them in the fireplace and reached in to grab them out and burned her arm. So there are stories like that are pretty traumatic. But again, she comes into the office and is happy to be there and in a community of women who are all supporting her because they all gather together and cry together and laugh together and love together and eat together. And it's a pretty, I'm super privileged to witness the community that they've formed together.
Mind Your Wake is produced by Canopy Media. To find out more about Anchal Project and the work that Canopy is doing to support good business, visit canopyky.org/Anchal. That's ANCHAL. This show was produced by Ben Soley and Elshadai Smith-Mensah. If you like what you've heard, please follow Canopy on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. We are at CanopyKY. That's CANOPYKY. Thanks for listening. We'll be back in your feed soon with more ideas in good business.